I think there were three big things which went wrong for us. One was, of course, at the start, the partition. The second was the delay in exercising the nuclear option. And the third was the delay in the economic reforms. So China not only did not get partitioned, actually China grew in this period territorially. China exercised its nuclear option early, 1964. We did a half-hearted move in 74. We did it, but we didn't do it. So we had to do it all over again in 98. And that's, 74 was tough enough, but by the time you stretched it to 98, you actually created a big burden on yourself and also allowed Pakistan to catch up in that period. And of course, for me, the most serious was really the economic reform, because if you look, China, you can say, embarked on its economic reform pretty much after Mao died. So by 1980, 79, China was very clearly set on a course of economic reform. It took us another decade plus. But there's a very big difference also. Here's the paradox. Precisely because China, in a sense, was during the Cultural Revolution period, the Great Leap Forward Cultural Revolution period, China pretty much it did itself so much economic damage during that period that there were no vested interests left by the time the late 70s came, who bitterly opposed those reforms. So, in a sense, once the Chinese leadership said we are going down this path, because they were in a worse situation than they were, it was easier for them and more decisive for them to go down that path. In our case, we delayed it by a decade plus. Then there were interests which kind of continued that debate and slowed down that reform. So we never had that sort of clean slate ability to progress with China. So it's not just China had a head start of a decade. China also had a pathway which was much more obstacle-free than it was for us. And then I would argue, in many ways, China had a better strategy. Because to me, it's not just that we did 1991, 92 and said, okay, now great, we are launched. I do believe, and I think you and I don't entirely agree on this aspect of it, that our model of globalized, of embracing the world was deeply flawed. We did not build our domestic supply chains, we did not support our small and medium industries. We thought the world economy would be fair to us, and therefore the more we exposed ourselves to the global economy, the more we would progress, we would become competitive. I think the reality was that the world economy was full of players who were not market economies, who gamed the world trading rules, who actually, in a sense, used their practices to fundamentally disadvantage our businesses. So we are one of the few economies where our own companies do not get a level playing field. So late start, no clean pathway, a lot of domestic lack of support, not the right vision. I think these were all factors. And I think today, correcting that, to me, the Atmanirbhar Bharat is not a slogan. It is actually a corrective of a flawed model of globalization that we pursued for more than 2 decades, and I think which has not served our country well.